birds and mammals. It's the rule, not the exception. And this is one of the most outrageous ones. Don Grayson, in this book, Quaternary Extinctions or Prehistoric Revolution, says, in the valley of the Thames, that's in southern England, for instance, woolly mammoth, woolly rhinos, musk ox, reindeer, hippopotamus, and cave lion had all been found by 1855 in stratigraphic contexts that seemed to indicate contemporaneity. In other words, they're fossilized or they're buried together, indicating at the same time. Now they try to separate into interglacials and glacials. The hippopotamus lived up there during an interglacial, but we have an interglacial now. Do we have any hippos in England? Could they live in England? I don't think so. How would we explain this? Well, with the warm North Atlantic, that onshore flow would keep Britain and France warm for quite a while early in the Ice Age, warm and wet. So it'd be a nice environment, probably cooler than Africa, for the hippo to migrate up there after the flood. But then it changes. It gets cooler, ice starts forming in the mountains, spreads to the lowlands, and covers up most of England. And by then, the cooling, you had the reindeer, the woolly mammoth, the woolly rhinos come and live there too. And they died together. In 100 places do you find hippo fossils in Ice Age sediments in southern England. I think we can explain it with this model with warm ocean, warm onshore flow. End Ice Age mass extinctions. The woolly mammoths are only one of the animals that went extinct. 100 species of large animals in North America, that's 70% went extinct at the end of the Ice Age. Europe and Asia, 75% went extinct. Australia, 90% went extinct. Why? This is when things were improving. Supposedly it was warming up, the ice was melting, you're getting more land for them to migrate into. Why? Well, because it didn't work like that. It was actually, it had mild winters, cool summers, which favors these animals, but then it got cold instead of warm towards the end of the Ice Age. So it's just the opposite of what they think. Stressed them out. Now this is a mystery that's been around for well over 200 years. Here's a recent book, which is a summary of a conference. It's by Alroy, 1999. He says, after many decades of debate, the North American end Pleistocene, that's end Ice Age, megafaunal mass extinctions remains a lightning rod of controversy. The extraordinary divergent opinions expressed in this volume show that no resolution is in sight. It's one of those many, many mysteries associated with the Ice Age. Besides the Ice Age itself, you have all these other mysteries. So how do I explain it? Well, obviously it was dry, you had drought, you had cold, they weren't used to the cold. That's the surprise thing. At the end of the Ice Age, when the ice sheets were melting, it was colder in the winters. I mean, the winters were colder, summers warmer. The summers is when the ice melted. Very little ice was added in the winters because they were colder. The colder the air, the less moisture, so you had less winter precipitation. And with warmer summers, you'd not only melt that little bit of winters, you'd melt a lot more of the ice that had formed the previous 500 years. Dust storms. I think dust storms probably is responsible more than anything else besides the woolly mammoths, but also caused the horse and the camel that lived in North America during the Ice Age. It caused them to go extinct. And strong winds and fire. I think we had fires involved. So I believe the post-flood Ice Age model can explain these Ice Age extinctions. So now I'm going on to the challenge. They challenge us on this model, these ancient Ice Ages. And here is what they say. That you had a late Paleozoic Ice Age, 250 to 350 million years ago. Now that doesn't mean it was glaciated the whole time. They have times when it surges and then it goes down and it moves from one part of their supercontinent to another. So the details are a little more complicated, but this is a 100 million year Ice Age in the late Paleozoic. Then you have a short one in the late Ordovician, mainly in the Sahara Desert area, when the Sahara Desert was close to the South Pole by polar wandering. Also, you have the late Precambrian. Now, this is a long Ice Age, but it has some periods that were not glaciated. So it's a broad brush to have 300 million years. By the way, this is when life was supposedly evolving up to what's called the Cambrian explosion at about 530 million years ago. So life should have been evolving during her, but yet they're finding out now that much of the globe supposedly was covered by ice, even at the equator. And then you have one in the mid-Precambrian, approximately this time. Mainly from these deposits are mainly found in Ontario, Canada. And they do have evidence for these. For instance, this is the late Paleozoic tillite. The tillite's a hardened till. These are hard rocks, by the way. They're not soft rocks like the recent Ice Age rocks. Those are not consolidated. These are consolidated. Yeah, look at the scratched bedrock, scratched and polished, and you have kind of a till-like feature here. So you do have evidence for these Ice Ages. It's just not something they just pull out of a hat. And we're challenged on these things. Arthur Strahler says the Carboniferous tillites, that's the late Paleozoic consolidated tills, cannot be accepted by creationists as being of glacial origin for the obvious reason that the tillite formations are both overlain and underlain by fossiliferous strata. In other words, fossiliferous strata above and below, which are deposits of the flood. During that great inundation, which lasted the better part of 1 year, there could have been no land ice formed by accumulation of snow. In other words, we can't have ice ages during the Ice Age. The water was too warm, and the water was too deep, and so forth. He's right. We wouldn't expect anything like that. So how would we explain it? Oh, we're also challenged by Davis Young, professor of geology at Calvin College, in his book Christianity, the Age of the Earth. He believes in an earth billions of years old. He believes in evolution. He says, thus, once more, we find abundant evidence in nature of materials. He's talking about the Ice Age materials, tillites, the ancient Ice Age material, that require much more time to form than that which is allotted to us by the one-year flood. He has a whole list of these problems for us to solve. And we do have problems. When we get to the broad picture says flood. When we get into the details of explaining certain things, it is difficult because one of the reasons we don't have enough researchers doing the research to put it all together. So we're challenged. But there's problems with these ancient Ice Age ideas. First of all, they're associated with warmth indicators like dolomite. A lot of times dolomite is forms in either warm water, warm climate. A lot of times they're capping right above the tillites in some areas. The tillites are the deposits of these ancient Ice Ages. Also, the deposits are practically all marine. 96% or more are marine. So that's a little different. So maybe we ought to be thinking of a marine mechanism for their deposition. Also, you'd expect certain glacial features to be preserved in the geological record that are missing if it was a real Ice Age. Also, this idea that in the late Paleozoic, the paleolatitude of this material is at the equator and it's marine, indicating that you had an ice sheet that developed clear to the equator at sea level, which implies that the whole globe was glaciated. And now we have a problem called snowball Earth. And it's being debated in the literature right now because people can't comprehend this, especially when you